Robinhood's Hood Week is here. 12 days, 3 legendary offers, and unlimited bonus amounts. Earn 3% on IRA transfers with Robinhood Gold, 2% on transfers with at least a $10,000 margin balance, and 1% on brokerage transfers until October 27th. Hood Week ends soon, so visit Robinhood.com/HoodWeek. Investing is risky. Bonus offers subject to terms and conditions. Visit Robinhood.com/HoodWeek for more information. Margin is not suitable for all investors. Robinhood Gold is offered through Robinhood Gold LLC and is a subscription offering services for a fee. Brokerage services offered through Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, a registered broker-dealer.
Good afternoon. Let's do some business. In fact, we're doing it live right now and right here, doing more at 4 weekday afternoons. We get right down to business with the news-driven hour right after Ben Shapiro and just before the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang at 5, Mottek On Money. Live on the air, 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at kbc.com. And your on-demand Mottek On Money podcast, kbc.com, Apple, iTunes, and all your favorite podcast platforms. Stocks finishing mixed today to close out the week. Interest rates and the bond market extending their climb ahead of next week's big jobs report, which, of course, is the big enchilada of monthly economic reports. The Dow coming in for a closing loss today of 260 points, settling at 42,114. The S&P 500 slipping just about 2 points. The NASDAQ, though, climbing, gain 103 points, ending the week at 18,519. NVIDIA, still the Magnificent One, dethroning Apple today as the world's most valuable company following a record-shattering rally in NVIDIA. NVIDIA shares of $1.13 at $141 and change. Apple up 84 cents at $231.41. Looks like NVIDIA's market value briefly touched $3.53 trillion, slightly above Apple's $3.52 trillion. Treasury bond yields finishing higher today as the latest report on consumer confidence improved this month. The yield in the 10-year note has popped over the past month and a half now at 4.23%. Price of oil moving up about 4% this week on tensions rising in the oil-rich Middle East. Geopolitical developments likely to continue to shape oil price action in the near term, and we see oil moving higher today. Boeing now considering the sale of its space business, if you can believe it, as it tries to right itself, according to the Wall Street Journal. We're watching Boeing stock move slightly higher today. Boeing machinist a day ago overwhelmingly rejected a contract proposal, opting to extend the weeks-long strike and send negotiators back to the bargaining table. 64% of workers voted against the new contract, according to the IAM, the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, the union representing 33,000 Boeing employees in Washington State, Oregon, and right here in California. Spirit Airlines planning to sell planes and cut jobs. Spirit reportedly in talks now with Frontier about a potential merger, and shares of Spirit rising up 36 cents today to $2.79. That stock has seen a pop from recent lows. DJT, Trump Media and Technology Group shares have been rallying big time in the build-up to the presidential election after the stock hit an intraday low of 11 and change back on September 24th. It has since tripled over the following month to reach an intraday high of 36 and change this week and moving higher again today, moving up, in fact, up $4 to $38.95 at the close today. Consumer confidence, meanwhile, hitting a 6-month high as Republicans grow confident in a Donald Trump win. Growing confidence among Republicans in a victory for Donald Trump, helping to push a survey of consumer confidence to a 6-month high less than 2 weeks before the presidential election. And that election day coming up less than 2 weeks now. Los Angeles County District Attorney George Gascon announcing his recommendation that Eric and Lyle Menendez be resentenced and immediately eligible for parole. Multiple steps would still need to be taken and could take months, if not longer, for their actual release. They were convicted in the 1989 murders of their parents in Beverly Hills. I'll discuss that and more, including the ongoing crime wave in Los Angeles, impacting businesses in a big way, with veteran prosecutor Nathan Hochman, who is challenging George Gascon in the L.A. County DA race. He'll be joining us live later this hour. Big day for business and civic leaders in the South Bay this week at the 10th Annual South Bay Economic Forecast event at Cal State Dominguez Hills, at which I served as moderator for the 10th year in a row. We'll get the latest forecast and talk about the theme this year, revolutionizing business with AI and robotics, with Dr. Finwin Prager, co-director of the South Bay Economics Institute. But first, on your money, the markets, the economy, NVIDIA, the Magnificent One, and the whole works now. Joining us live, investment expert Gabriel Wisdom, managing director at American Money Management and author of Wisdom on value investing. Gabriel Wisdom, thank you very much for taking the call this afternoon.
Well, my pleasure, Frank. You mentioned NVIDIA. Of course, it's very exciting to watch a stock or own a stock that's up 180% we've got a year, and it's been on a huge tear. Now, this is not the only magnificent company. Microsoft, Amazon, so many of the others are up substantially this year. And along comes Goldman Sachs that says, well, they expect the Standard & Poor's 500 to deliver only a 3% annualized rate of return over the next decade. Nothing like the 13% annualized rates of return that we've become somewhat accustomed to. And the reason for it is the 10 largest stocks in the S&P 500, like NVIDIA, account for more than a third of the total market valuation or capitalization of the Standard & Poor's 500. So what's happening? The average investor is feeling optimistic, and some 60% of the U.S. stock fund market was held by passive index investors, retail investors buying the S&P 500. Sure, it's cheap and it's easy, but if Goldman Sachs is right, that's not really the place to be. We saw it today, Frank, with the NASDAQ doing reasonably well, but the S&P 500 getting softer.
All right, so NVIDIA overtaking Apple today. That is certainly very, very big news. And Tesla, let's not forget about Tesla on a roll this week after that big pop yesterday, up another nearly $9 today at $269 and change. And Elon Musk making more money on his Tesla stock over the past couple of days than over any other two-day period in the 14 years that Tesla's been publicly traded. So his worth skyrocketed this week, too.
Yes, it did. Elon Musk is obviously a very out loud Donald Trump backer. And he said that Tesla's holding off on building a planned factory in the Monterrey area of Mexico because he wants to see how the election shakes out. And it isn't just Tesla that's holding off. It's BYD, the Chinese electric vehicle maker. They've been looking for locations to build a Mexican plant because Mexico, has surpassed China as the number one, exporter to the United States. But things are on hold. Everybody's tapping the brakes, waiting for the outcome of this election. There are others as well. There are a number of mergers and acquisitions that are on hold. So everybody's waiting for November 5.
Certainly. In the meantime, Elon Musk's worth, according to Forbes, went up nearly $5 billion to $274.7 billion. Larry Ellison, Oracle, famous for Oracle, of course, he's number 2 on the list, by the way, of the wealthiest people in the world. He's up to $211.7 billion, despite dropping $573 million. This is according to the latest real-time numbers from Forbes. And Jeff Bezos at number 3 at $205.6 billion, up $1.3 billion. It looks like overnight. And Mark Zuckerberg, number 4th on the list, just below $200 billion now, up $1.9 billion. So that's quite remarkable. Now, when you talk to if you had a client like Elon Musk who was up $5 billion today, and maybe Larry Ellison also, who was down about $500 million, what would your advice be to those folks, those high flyers?
Well, we've got the World Series starting tonight, in Dodger Stadium, and the global sports ecosystem, according to some analysis, is still underpriced and misunderstood, and a number of family offices, very wealthy sovereign wealth funds, investors, private equity firms are buying sports franchises. And the reason for it is there's more consumer interest, there's major technological advances. We've seen a number of new media outlets created just in the last 10 years. And it's quite dynamic. And the market for the Dodgers New York Yankees game or the World Soccer Cup or any number of sporting events, and NBA, these are worldwide franchises now. So I'd say to Mr. Musk, maybe time to buy a big team.
And by the way, Wall Street rooting for the Dodgers, by the way, according to one measure, kind of like the Super Bowl indicator. Looks like if the American League is victorious, market will go up. That's one theory, right?
Well, I'm definitely a Dodgers fan. But we had Juan Soto as for a year at San Diego Padres. I became pretty fond of Juan in a million, as we like to say. But this is going to be a very exciting matchup for sure.
Absolutely. It looks like, according to Market Watch, the Dodgers are favored on Wall Street to beat the Yankees because the stock market averages perform better after a team from the National League wins the World Series than after one from the American League is victorious. So the bottom line is the Dodgers are being rooted for on Wall Street. So as we all are, of course, here in Los Angeles. That is, of course, huge news and pumping up the local economy. Now, let's take a look at, as you mentioned, the election's coming up here pretty fast, and DJT stock has gotten a big pop, which I mentioned also. Donald J. Trump, the media company, up $4 today at 38 and change. What's your view on this one, which seems to be tied to the fortunes of the former president regaining the White House?
Well, the company has been losing money consistently. The equity there is all goodwill. It's truly a bet on a Trump victory, and if he does get another term in Washington, why almost certainly he'll use every available asset that he has to make some money for himself. He's got he's very transparent in that regard. So it's you could consider it a Trump trade. Maybe Tesla as well. It's been doing quite well because of optimism for the Trump campaign. Donald Trump has vowed levies on foreign imports. He has called tariffs the most beautiful word in the dictionary. He said he'd use tariffs to defend the U.S. dollar's reserve currency status. I'd say dollar-denominated assets, if he wins, are big winners as well. The losers have been European countries. German Chancellor, for example, just said that this could set off a trade war if in fact we start levying large tariffs. And I mentioned Mexico. Their gross domestic product is expected to come in just above 1%. That's down from 3% last year over concerns about tariffs. So major implications for this election.
Certainly, and we'll have a lot to talk about as we approach the election date, less than 2 weeks from now, and beyond that, of course. Boeing making news. I don't know if you saw the report in the Wall Street Journal this afternoon that says Boeing is now considering the sale of its whole space business. This is the company that helped to get America to the moon in the first place. Boeing now considering the sale of its celebrated space business as it tries to right itself. According to the Wall Street Journal, Boeing stock down 19 cents today at 155 and change. This after the company's machinist rejected the latest contract proposal this week. What about Boeing here?
Boeing, if it gets much cheaper, is going to be, I think, worth considering as be part of a diversified portfolio. I mean, the consensus loss was around $1 a share at the start of the month, and now it's around $10 in terms of losses. This has been just a terrible time for Boeing and the machinists. I mean, they've got a good chance. I'd say an excellent chance of getting some sort of advantage in their negotiations by going into space and space technology. Boeing might have done what Peter Lynch used to call diversify rather than diversify. Diversification has hurt so many major companies, and now they're spinning off the space division. I think that's a smart move for Boeing.
In the meantime, SpaceX has seen its 100th launch of the year, which is quite remarkable. What about, let's turn to commodities.
Sure.
Absolutely. Turning to commodities here, we see oil moving higher. Obviously, we're watching what's happening in the Middle East very closely. Oil in New York back just below $72 a barrel. Gold getting a pop this week, hitting new highs, up 11.90 to $2,760.80 an ounce. This at a time when we're told inflation is supposedly easing. Gold has been on a record-shattering tear. Oil, of course, still high. What are your views on the commodity sector here?
Frank, oil has been somewhat soft in terms of earnings because it's under so much pressure from countries who insist that, oil and legacy fuels are just plain bad. It's going to take some time for us to wean off of oil. They're not making enough of it now, so I'd expect prices to go higher. With regard to gold, there's something that we've watched for years called the gold-silver ratio. With gold at, let's call it $2,700 an ounce in round numbers, and silver at $33 an ounce, you could buy 81 ounces of silver for every 1 ounce of gold. Well, the geological estimates suggest that there are only 19 ounces of silver for every ounce of gold in the Earth's crust. Only 19 ounces of silver for every 1 ounce of gold in the Earth. Silver could easily, in my view, if the trend continues, double, triple, quadruple from here just to be in line with the amount of silver that's available relative to the amount of gold. So I continue to like it.
Very interesting. Well, thanks for sharing that. And any other specific places where you are putting money now, Gabriel Wisdom, and or taking it off the table?
Frank, we're always concerned about all-time highs, and there have been several dozen of them this year. But, since 1950, according to this research that FactSet did and J.P. Morgan Asset Management, buying the markets at all-time highs has actually given you better odds than trying to buy the dips or wait for the lows. So I'm just staying all in. I would say stay the course. The market's broadening out. We're seeing rotation. I'm very bullish on the next couple of years, and so I want to own the broad market rather than taking individual bets for everything.
Fantastic. Gabriel Wisdom, thank you very much for taking the call to wrap up the week. We do appreciate it, as always. That is Money Manager Gabriel Wisdom with American Money Management, based here in Southern California, author of Wisdom on Value Investing. Gabriel, wish you a great weekend and hope to speak with you again very soon.
Thank you, Frank.
And right out to the freeways we go now, heading into a big weekend here in 790 KABC. Frank Mottek here. Did you know that for more than 10,000 years, gold has been the greatest store of value and considered a safe haven asset to preserve your wealth? Now with the U.S. debt at more than $35 trillion and climbing, not to mention the Biden administration getting us involved in costly wars, developing the digital dollar, central bank digital currency, and inflation spiraling out of control, it's more critical now than ever before to safeguard your assets like your cash savings and retirement accounts with physical gold. Opening a gold IRA is one of the best ways to secure your wealth and create a stable financial future. Stop worrying about your retirement and the market and cash savings in the bank. Feel confident, prepared, and in control with physical gold and, yes, silver. Give Joe Morgan a call now at 1-800-753-8534. Mention yours truly, Frank Mottek, and you could get $1,000 worth of silver with a qualifying purchase. Call now, 1-800-753-8534, or visit UnitedGoldGroup.com. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KABC, and 790 KABC welcomes Dr. Jordan Peterson coming to the Honda Center on February 26th. Tickets are on sale as of today at Ticketmaster.com. And right now, caller 9 wins at 1-888-795-2222. You can get a pair of tickets to the show if you're caller number 9. Call right now, 1-888-795-2222. The tickets are furnished by Live Nation. Mixed finish of the week on Wall Street. The Dow down 260 points today at 42,114. The S&P 500 slipping 2 at 5,868. The Nasdaq, though, managed a closing gain of 103 points at 18,519 as the big tech names moved higher, including NVIDIA, which now exceeds Apple as far as a market cap is concerned. NVIDIA taking the crown from Apple, up $1.13 to $141.54 for NVIDIA shares. Apple up 84 cents at $231.41. Shares of DJT, that's the Donald Trump media stock, up $4 at $38.95, a gain of about 11.5%. Shares of Spirit Airlines moving higher again today, make that 36 cents at $2.79 a share. The price of gold moving higher, up nearly $12 at $2,760.80 an ounce. Silver also up 8 cents at $33.88 an ounce. Oil up $1.50 at $71.69. Oh yeah, Tesla continues on a roll today, up nearly $9 at $269.19 after that $40 or so pop just yesterday. The volatility index, meanwhile, in all this, has moved higher by 6.5%. Boeing shares down 19 cents at 155.01. Yep, you heard right. According to the Wall Street Journal, Boeing is considering selling its space business, believe it or not. According to the Wall Street Journal, Boeing is considering sale of its space business, which would include Boeing's Starliner space vehicle, beset by recent problems in operations supporting the International Space Station. This after Boeing machinists overwhelmingly rejected a contract proposal this week, opting to extend a weeks-long strike and send negotiators back to the drawing board. 64% of workers voted against the new contract, according to the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, the union that represents the thousands of Boeing workers here in California as well as Washington State and Oregon. And now the latest news here in 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KABC. Good afternoon. The 10th annual South Bay Economic Forecast has just wrapped up. I've had the honor of moderating all 10 of these economic forecast events at Cal State University Dominguez Hills. The latest, titled Convergence Unleashed, Revolutionizing Business with, you guessed it, AI and Robotics in the Next Decade. A very timely discussion here on technology ahead and impacting the economy. Joining me here now is Dr. Finwin Prager, the co-director of the South Bay Economics Institute, who put together the economic forecast with his colleagues, Dr. Jose Martinez and Dr. Jennifer Broadman, doing this for many, many years. Dr. Prager, great to see you here, and give us an update on how the South Bay economy is looking, one of the economic engines of Southern California.
Yeah, it's great to have you back on campus, Frank. It's been 10 years of educational experiences here, learning about the local economy. We're in such a privileged position to be able to conduct economics research about this thriving local economy. Obviously, we have a significant manufacturing sector in the area of aerospace in particular, but also really healthy health sector, as well as lots of other industries, especially around the ports and the related logistics businesses. So it's always a real pleasure to be here and to have so many innovative and fascinating companies come and present on the tech panels. We've got various different transportation-related companies, including Waymo. We had Chevron present. We had Ampere, who does electrified flights and for local aviation, as well as two really innovative robotics companies who produce precision innovations around manufacturing. So it's been really another great year.
Very exciting, and you cover all the bases here. Certainly a lot of business people here, too, as well as political leaders here in the South Bay. What was your message to all these folks here? What is your assessment of the economy? A lot of businesses here rely on this economic forecast in the South Bay to make plans for the year ahead. How are things looking?
Well, they also rely on your excellent journalism, Frank, so we appreciate the work that you do on not just Mottek On Money, but many of these regional efforts. The economy is in great shape, with some, maybe some uncertainties and dark clouds on the horizon. So all the major economic indicators are good. The economy has been growing for, I think it's 8 quarters right now. Not at the, gangbusters rate that you see in maybe the Chinese economy, but good, solid, healthy growth of 2 to 3% over the past 8 quarters. Unemployment has been ticking up over the last number of months, although the last couple of months we saw a decline in unemployment as jobs were added above 150,000 jobs is the threshold that's needed, and I think last month it was 254,000 added, so really positive there. And all of that good news is partly why the Fed decided to cut the interest rate, not just by 0.25%, but by 0.5%, which is was, I guess, a little bit of a surprise, to be honest, although as we discussed at the event, the mortgage markets had already kind of factored that in, so we have seen a bit of a bounce back. Nonetheless, that's good news, right, for people interested in buying a home, and hopefully that'll provide some relief for those individuals, as well as the companies that rely on high rates for capital.
Remember last year or the year before now, there was talk of recession, which did not materialize. And certainly inflation has been a big topic of conversation here at this event and in recent years. What about inflation and what about new recession talk now?
Yeah, as my colleague Jose Martinez always says, the Fed gets what the Fed wants, and it wanted lower inflation. And that's good for the overall economy to have lower prices, for sure. The steep raises in inflation that we saw during the 22-23 period were really painful, and that's when it's all accumulated. We're looking back over the past 4 years, especially in a political cycle like we're in at the moment, and prices have raised on average 20% for the CPI. So that's really hitting people hard in the pocketbooks. And thankfully, consumer confidence has remained strong during that period, especially recently. So we haven't seen that kind of contagion effect into the rest of the economy, thankfully. But that's still a real problem for businesses. And they've been passing those costs on to consumers in different ways. Thankfully, incomes have been rising, especially more recently, to offset that. So overall, people are wealthier, but people at the bottom are still hurting, and that's not something that we want to ignore at all.
All right, let's get to the exciting stuff now. No conference would be complete without talking about AI, which was discussed in depth here, and robotics as well. How do you see AI affecting the South Bay economy and getting the robots also in the mix here?
Yeah. So AI is a really amazingly powerful tool. We're actually trialing a lot of different efforts on campus to help us improve productivity and to ultimately serve our students better. In terms of the broader workplace, it's everywhere, right? And it's going to be impacting certain industries with more vigor, for sure. There's always going to be impacts in terms of employment, although our suspicion is that while in the short run there's going to be possibly a kind of displacement effect in terms of labor, in the long run, as companies become more productive, we're going to see additional hires. And in fact, some of our presenting sponsors today were commenting on that, how, in their case, more robotics were enabling their companies to grow, which ultimately leads to more employment. So overall, the picture is going to be mixed with that. But in the long run, as we've seen in the past, there was a labor productivity boost after the dot-com boom, and there could be one after the AI boom, but we'll have to wait and see. In terms of AI specifically, much of it is based out of San Francisco, obviously, in terms of the core architecture, OpenAI and such. However, what we're seeing in the South Bay region is that technology being applied into the manufacturing sectors in particular, but also healthcare, service-based economies, etc.
All right, since we're on the campus here at CSU-DH, Cal State University Dominguez Hills, I want to ask you how you've seen AI impact education and how it's been used in your class, for example.
Yeah, so we do our best to catch any people that are trying to cheat using it, although on the other hand, there's real benefits to learning how to use the tools appropriately. We don't discourage it in the classroom in the right settings. And so as an educator, I feel like my kind of responsibility is figuring out ways of teaching this material without it being negatively used to cheat or to, misapply answers and those kind of things. So, we're also, as I mentioned during the event, we're piloting an advising tool so that students can really quickly access the information that they need to explore career opportunities and the educational pathways to get them there.
That's great. For anyone that wants to explore the full 10th Annual South Bay Economic Forecast, what's the best way to access that?
On our website, so search for the South Bay Economic Forecast and the Cal State Dominguez Hills. And yeah, we look forward to reading it.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for sharing your insights with us. As always, Dr. Finwin Prager, the co-director of the South Bay Economics Institute at the 10th Annual South Bay Economic Forecast here at Cal State University, Dominguez Hills. Thank you very much for joining us here on Mottek On Money on 790 KBC.
Thank you so much for welcoming us on.
Thank you very much. And right after the freeways, we go now on 790 KBC. Frank Mottek here. Did you know that for more than 10,000 years, gold has been the greatest store of value and considered a safe haven asset to preserve your wealth? Now, with the U.S. debt at more than $35 trillion and climbing, not to mention the Biden administration getting us involved in costly wars, developing the digital dollar central bank digital currency, and inflation still spiraling out of control, it's more critical now than ever before to safeguard your assets, like your cash savings and retirement accounts, with physical gold. Opening a gold IRA is one of the best ways to secure your wealth and create a stable financial future. Stop worrying about your retirement in the market and cash savings in the bank. Feel confident, prepared, and in control with physical gold and, yes, silver. Give Joe Morgan a call right now at 1-800-753-8534. Mention Frank Mottek, and you could get $1,000 worth of silver with a qualifying purchase. Call now, 1-800-753-8534. or visit UnitedGoldGroup.com. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KBC. The presidential election less than 2 weeks away, and one of the most important contests on the ballot locally is the race for LA County District Attorney, with smash-and-grab retail theft still making news almost every day. It should also be noted that shoplifting in Los Angeles soared 81% for all of last year. Incumbent George Gascon and challenger Nathan Hochman facing off on the ballot for the LA County District Attorney seat. In all this, we just heard that LA County DA George Gascon announced his recommendation that Eric and Lyle Menendez be resentenced and immediately eligible for parole. The brothers were convicted in the 1989 murders of their parents at their family mansion in Beverly Hills. Joining us live now is veteran prosecutor Nathan Hochman, veteran federal prosecutor, former president of the LA City Ethics Commission, and candidate for Los Angeles County District Attorney. Nathan Hochman, thank you very much for coming to the line this afternoon.
Thank you for having me on, Frank. Appreciate it.
First of all, give us your reaction to this announcement by George Gascon.
So on the substance of the resentencing decision, I'm not in a position to comment, and that's because I haven't been privy to the thousands of pages of confidential prisoner information. I haven't reviewed the transcripts from the two trials. I haven't spoken to the prosecutors, law enforcement, defense counsels, haven't reviewed all the evidence or spoken to the victim families. But I can tell you that even though I can't comment on the substance, the timing of it is incredibly suspicious, because the original habeas corpus motion was sent to the prosecutors in Gascon in May of 2023. And then they got a resentencing request in February of 2024. So if Gascon thought resentencing was the appropriate result, could have moved 8 to 16 months ago, and thereby not kept the Menendezes incarcerated for that amount of time. Or since there is no deadline on resentencing, he could have filed this motion on November 6th, 7th, or 8th, right after the November 5th election. Instead, he chose to do it 12 days before the election, when he knows he's 30 points down in the polls, when he's actually got no money in his coffers to afford any media. So this was a desperate political move to create a made-for-TV media moment, which the media fed, and it got a lot of free advertising. But the timing of it is completely political.
And it should be noted he had nothing to do with that case right back then, and has never tried any cases for that matter.
Absolutely. In other words, he has not spoken. The Beverly Hills Police Department, which did the underlying investigation, they issued a press release saying that Gascon has never bothered to talk to them even once. So again, he has not done his homework behind this resentencing decision. And the one thing I can tell you is if I am elected DA, I will make sure I do a very thorough review of the facts and the law before I would ever opine on this issue.
And it should be noted, and I remember certainly being on the air back in those days, prosecutors at the time said the killings were financially motivated, with the brothers going on lavish spending sprees after the killings. Of course, there's a lot to that case, so it'll be interesting to see how all of this plays out. And in the meantime, people are more focused on these smash and grabs and the street crime out there. What is your message to the folks on how to address all that?
So the message is that Gascon's policies that have favored criminals over victims, that have basically put extreme blanket policies and handcuffs on his own prosecutors, to go after this type of crime have failed. And what I will do is go back to what I call the hard work middle. It's a rejection of both extremes, mass incarceration and Gascon's decarceration, and focuses on going back to looking at each case individually, the individual defendant, the crime committed, the impact on the victim, to determine who the true threats are to our public safety. Those are often the repeat offenders who need to be behind bars, and the ones that aren't. Your first-time nonviolent offender still has to pay a debt back to society if they violate society's laws, but that punishment needs to be proportionate to the crime. So that could be community service, it could be restitution, pay it back if you stole something, or if you've got a serious drug addiction, we'll give you a choice. You can go to prison, or you can do an 18-month rigorous rehab program that if you succeed one day at a time, will go ahead and record clean of that offense. So again, that hard middle approach is sending a message to criminals that if you want to go ahead and break our laws in society, you will be held proportionally accountable. And there's no more Gascon specials out there, which is effectively a get-out-of-jail-free card.
And you received the support of prominent business leaders here in Los Angeles, including Rick Caruso. What are you hearing from Rick and other business leaders here about getting the situation turned around?
You know, I'm actually very honored to get the endorsement of Rick Caruso, one of the iconic business leaders here in the community, but also the Los Angeles Chamber of Commerce, the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce, the Central City Association, and other business groups. Because they look at what's happened over the last 3.5 years, and they don't know. They basically tell me this is unsustainable. They can't have this level of crime. They can't have, as a budget item, a level of protection for their buildings, for their tenants, for their customers, and still stay in business and be profitable. And what I told them is I said, look, I will be the DA who basically goes back and does the job. And I will in turn not only empower the 800 prosecutors who voted 98% to support Gascon's recall, but I'll empower the tens of thousands of law enforcement officers who have very often said, look, our hands are tied by the DA's office, and they truly were. I'll untie their hands. I'll say, go back to do your job. Bring us great cases beyond a reasonable doubt with legally admissible evidence, and we'll do our jobs. And that is, music to ears that are desperate to hear it from the business community.
You've spoken about crime as well as homelessness. That's another big issue impacting business here. What are your thoughts about how to address homelessness here in the Los Angeles area?
Well, for the last 3.5 years, the DA's office has not been a partner in addressing homelessness. And that's what I would have the DA's office be. A partner with, for instance, the social service organizations like the Los Angeles Homeless Service Authority, the Department of Mental Health, Mental Work, Public Works, Vocational Services. And I've seen that approach work. It's called the HOST team, the Homeless Outreach Services team, where they go out to the homeless encampments like the ones on the Venice Boardwalk, the one on San Vicente near the VA, the Rio Hondo River under the 101 freeways. And they execute a 5-point plan. They identify each person there and make sure, and they come back day after day for 8 weeks. They assess their needs to see whether or not they need a job or they have a mental illness or a drug addiction. They do outreach and try and place those people in facilities that will actually meet their needs. But if it doesn't work, they post a sign, a 14-day sign, and they say, look, if you're not out of here in 14 days, the truck's coming and we'll put your stuff in warehouses. And sure enough, they've been able to move thousands of people over the last 7 years, and they've only had to arrest 2, proving that if you treat the homeless compassionately and law enforcement is part of the solution, you actually can go a long way to solving this homeless encampment problem.
Game 1 of the World Series about to begin. Who are you rooting for in the World Series?
Oh, that one's easy. Lifelong Dodgers fan. And I have many bets with my Yankees fans, and I look forward to collecting on all of them.
Fantastic. Attorney Nathan Hochman, veteran federal prosecutor, former president of the LA City Ethics Commission, candidate for Los Angeles County District Attorney. Thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Now stay tuned for the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang. I'll be back with more at 4 on Monday afternoon right here. Mottek On Money, 790 KBC.
You met Lala Kent on Vanderpump Rules. Now Lala and her friends share everything on Give Them Lala.
Baby S is giving me money-making moves in the room.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have one kid who's like, I want to just live in a box and do like artistic dancing and paint. Ocean's going to be like, it doesn't matter if I'm broke, Mom. I'm passionate about it. And Baby S is going to be the one that says, passion doesn't pay bills, Ocean.
Watch what Lala is talking about on YouTube or search for Give Them Lala wherever you listen.